The blizzard howled like a vengeful spirit across the desolate moors, blanketing Snow Manor in an impenetrable shroud of white. It was the winter of 1935, and Hercule Poirot, the renowned Belgian detective, had accepted an invitation from Lord Harrington to this remote English estate, ostensibly for a quiet weekend retreat. As the wind battered the ancient stone walls, guests gathered in the flickering candlelight of the drawing room. Lord Harrington, a stern patriarch with a fortune built on shadowy dealings, raised his glass in toast. But as he sipped his port, his face contorted in agony. He collapsed, lifeless, the glass shattering on the floor. A murder in the storm with no escape possible. Who among the trapped souls had orchestrated this chilling demise? Chapter 1. The Arrival in the Storm. The wind came down from the high moors like a living thing, hungry, relentless, and utterly without mercy. It tore at the hedgerows, flinging snow in horizontal sheets that stung the eyes and numbed the cheeks. The chauffeur, a stoic Yorkshireman named Hargreaves, hunched over the wheel of the Daimler, his gloved knuckles white against the polished walnut. In the rear seat, Hercule Poirot sat impeccably upright, his patent leather shoes planted firmly on the heated foot warmer, his fur-collared overcoat buttoned to the throat. Yet even he, the fastidious Belgian who abhorred disorder in all its forms, could not suppress a small, involuntary shiver as the car fish-tailed on a patch of black ice. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, peering through the frost-laced window at the white desolation beyond. One might imagine oneself en route to Siberia rather than the English countryside. Tell me, Hargreaves, are we still upon the Queen's Highway? Or have we strayed into some Arctic wasteland? Hargreaves grunted, his breath fogging the windshield. "Road's there, sir. Somewhere under all this. Snow Manor's gates are half a mile yet. Lord Harrington's man said to watch for the stone pillars, carved with ravens they are." "Ravens," Poirot repeated, stroking the precise curves of his mustache. "Most appropriate. The raven is the harbinger of death in many cultures, n'est-ce pas? Though I trust our host intends merely a weekend of bridge and indifferent claret, not omens of mortality." The Daimler lurched again, tires spinning, then caught purchase on a stretch of gritted gravel. The headlights swept across a pair of weathered gateposts, each crowned by a stone corvid with wings outstretched as if in perpetual flight. The gates themselves, wrought iron black against the blinding white, stood ajar, a narrow corridor carved through drifts taller than a man. Hargreaves eased the car through, the chassis scraping snow with a sound like tearing silk. Beyond the gates, the drive wound upward through skeletal oaks, their branches laden with icy stalactites that glittered like chandeliers in the headlights. Poirot noted the absence of tire, tracks ahead. Theirs were the first wheels to breach the manor's defenses in days. The isolation was absolute. Even the telegraph wires sagged beneath their burden of snow, severed from the outside world. At last, the manor itself loomed into view, a brooding Gothic pile of gray stone, its chimneys belching smoke that was instantly devoured by the gale. Turrets stabbed the low sky, mullioned windows glowed amber against the storm. A single gas lamp flickered beside the porte-cochere, illuminating the figure of a tall, gaunt man in butler's black, his face as pallid as the snow itself. Hargreaves brought the car to a shuddering halt. The butler, Graves Poirot would later learn, strode forward with the rigid dignity of a soldier on parade, though his eyes darted nervously toward the swirling darkness beyond the lamplight. "Monsieur Poirot?" His voice was sepulchral, the vowels clipped by years of service. "Lord Harrington extends his welcome. If you'll follow me, sir, mind the steps. Ice forms treacherous there." Poirot descended, his Homburg hat clutched firmly against the wind. The cold struck him like a physical blow, seeping through the seams of his coat. but he betrayed no discomfort beyond a slight tightening of the lips. Graves took his valise with a bow so precise it might have been measured by calipers, then led the way beneath the archway. Inside, the contrast was startling. A blast of warmth rolled over Poirot, redolent of beeswax, wood smoke, and the faint metallic tang of coal. The entrance hall soared 2 stories high, its vaulted ceiling lost in shadow. A fire roared in a hearth large enough to roast an ox. Above the mantel, a stag's head gazed down with glass eyes that reflected the leaping flames. Suits of armor stood sentinel along the walls, their visors lowered as if in perpetual mourning. "His lordship is in the drawing room," Graves intoned, relieving Poirot of hat, coat, and gloves with the efficiency of a conjurer. "The other guests have arrived. Dinner will be served at 8. Poirot paused to survey his surroundings, his gaze lingering on the details that others might overlook. The faint scuff marks on the parquet where countless boots had trod, the single cobweb trembling in a draught from the minstrel's gallery. The portrait of a stern, bewigged ancestor whose eyes seemed to follow him across the room. Order, he reminded himself, was the foundation of detection. Even in chaos, patterns emerged. "Lead on, mon ami," he said at last. "I am most eager to meet our host." Graves inclined his head and started toward a set of double doors at the far end of the hall. As they walked, Poirot noted the butler's gait, slightly uneven, favoring the left leg. An old injury, perhaps? Or the consequence of carrying heavy trays up narrow servants' stairs? The little gray cells filed the observation away. The drawing room was a symphony of crimson and gold. Damask walls, turkey carpets, chandelier dripping with crystal that scattered firelight like diamonds. A dozen people turned as Poirot entered, their conversations faltering into a hush that felt almost reverential. He registered them in a single, sweeping glance, cataloging faces, postures, the subtle interplay of power and pretense. Lord Harrington himself dominated the room. A tall, broad-shouldered man in his late 50s with a florid complexion and a mustache that rivaled Poirot's own in magnificence. His tweed suit strained at the seams, a gold watch chain glinted across his waistcoat. He strode forward with the confidence of a man accustomed to command. "Poirot, by Jove, you've made it through the blasted weather." His handshake was crushing, his voice a boom that drowned the crackle of the fire. "Thought the bally storm might keep you in London. Come in, let me introduce you." Lady Harrington stood beside the mantel, a vision in emerald silk that clung to her still slender figure. She was perhaps 15 years her husband's junior, with porcelain skin and auburn hair coiled in an elaborate chignon. Her smile was practiced, but Poirot noted the tension at the corners of her mouth, the way her fingers worried the stem of her sherry glass. "My wife, Clarissa," Harrington said. "And this is my partner in certain ventures, Mr. Reginald Blackwell." Blackwell was a bear of a man, his dinner jacket tailored to accommodate shoulders that strained the seams. His face was ruddy from more than just the fire. A network of broken capillaries spoke of indulgence. He pumped Poirot's hand with enthusiasm that bordered on aggression. "Honored, sir. Heard all about your exploits. Solved the Orient Express business, didn't you?" "Capital." Poirot inclined his head modestly. "A trifling matter, monsieur. Merely the application of order and method." Across the room, a young woman perched on a velvet chaise longue, her gown a froth of pale blue chiffon. Miss Evelyn Harrington, niece to the Lord, Poirot recalled from the invitation, had the wide-eyed beauty of a pre-Raphaelite painting, though her expression held a petulance that marred the effect. She toyed with a string of pearls, her gaze flicking restlessly between her uncle and the newcomer. "And my niece, Evelyn," Harrington continued, his tone cooling perceptibly. "Though I dare say she'd rather be in London spending my money than buried in this God-forsaken pile." Evelyn's laugh was brittle. "Uncle, you're too cruel. One must make do with what one has." Her eyes, Poirot noted, were the color of storm clouds, beautiful but harboring lightning. In the shadows near the window stood the final guest, Dr. Jonathan Thorne, a thin, ascetic man with a scholar's stoop and a face etched by lines that spoke of sleepless nights. His evening clothes hung loosely on his frame. His fingers, stained faintly with nicotine, drummed against a medical bag that rested at his feet. When introduced, he merely nodded, his eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed spectacles. "Dr. Thorne is an old friend," Harrington explained. "Retired from Harley Street. Keeps himself to himself these days, but I persuaded him to join us. Thought the country air might do him good." Thorne's smile was wintry. "Your lordship is too kind, though I confess the air here is invigorating." Servants circulated with trays of canapes, tiny pastries filled with foie gras, smoked salmon on brown bread, caviar that gleamed like wet coal. Poirot accepted a glass of champagne, noting the vintage with approval. Conversation resumed, a polite murmur beneath which undercurrents swirled. He positioned himself near the fire, ostensibly to warm his hands, but in truth to observe. Lord Harrington held court, recounting a recent shooting party in Scotland. "Bagged 12 brace before luncheon, capital sport." Blackwell laughed too loudly, his gaze lingering on Lady Harrington's décolletage. Evelyn sulked, her foot tapping an impatient rhythm against the fender. Dr. Thorne stared into the flames as if reading secrets in their dance. Poirot sipped his champagne, his mind already at work. The invitation had been unexpected, a handwritten note delivered to his London flat requesting his presence for a quiet weekend to discuss a matter of mutual interest. Harrington had hinted at nothing specific, yet the urgency of the summons had piqued Poirot's curiosity. Men of Harrington's stamp did not summon the continent's most famous detective for idle chatter. Graves appeared at the doorway, his voice cutting through the chatter like a blade. "Dinner is served, my lord." The party processed into the dining room, a cavernous space paneled in dark oak and lit by a dozen candelabra. The table was set for 7. Harrington at the head, Lady Harrington at the foot, the others arranged with diplomatic precision. Poirot found himself seated between Evelyn and Dr. Thorne, opposite Blackwell. A centerpiece of hothouse roses perfumed the air. Silver gleamed, crystal sparkled. The first course, consommé madeleine, arrived in delicate porcelain bowls. Poirot tasted it with approval. The stock was rich, the tomato essence perfectly balanced. Conversation flowed. The state of the markets. Blackwell was voluble on the subject of rubber futures, the latest scandal in Mayfair. Lady Harrington's eyes glittered as she recounted the elopement of a debutante with her chauffeur. The unreliability of the wireless. Evelyn complained that the storm had silenced even the BBC. Beneath the banter, Poirot sensed friction. Harrington's gaze lingered on his niece with disapproval. Hers flashed defiance. Blackwell's laughter was forced, his eyes darting to the decanters as if measuring their contents. Dr. Thorne ate mechanically, his attention elsewhere. Lady Harrington's hand trembled slightly as she lifted her spoon. The fish course, sole meunière, the flesh flaky and fragrant with lemon, gave way to roast pheasant, its skin crackling, accompanied by bread sauce and cranberries. Wine flowed freely, a crisp Sancerre, then a robust claret that Harrington praised as a cheeky little 21. Poirot partook sparingly, his palate attuned to nuance rather than excess. As the entree was cleared, Harrington leaned back in his chair, his face flushed with satisfaction. "Well, Poirot," he boomed, "you've been devilish quiet. What do you make of us all, eh? A rum lot, I'll wager." Poirot set down his glass, his smile enigmatic. "Monsieur, I observe only that you have assembled a most interesting company. Each person here is, how shall I say, a study in contrasts. The devoted wife who watches her husband with eyes that are not entirely fond. The business partner whose laughter rings a touch too loud. The niece who dreams of London while buried in snow. The doctor who carries his secrets like a second skin. And the butler. He glanced toward Graves, who stood motionless by the sideboard, who hears everything yet reveals nothing. A hush fell. Harrington's smile faltered. Blackwell's hand tightened on his wine glass. Evelyn's cheeks flamed. Only Dr. Thorne seemed unmoved, though his fingers drummed faster against the tablecloth. Harrington recovered first, his laugh hearty but strained. By Jove, you don't miss much, do you? Well, here's to mysteries. May they all be solved before pudding. Glasses were raised, but the toast felt hollow. Graves circulated with the port decanter, a heavy crystal vessel that caught the candlelight like blood. He filled each glass with solemn precision, starting with his lordship. Harrington swirled the liquid, inhaling its bouquet with appreciation. "To old friends," he declared, "and new beginnings." He drank deeply. For a moment all was still. Then Harrington's face contorted. The glass slipped from his fingers, shattering against the table's tin a spray of ruby shards. He clutched at his throat, his eyes bulging in sudden, terrible agony. "Poison!" The word tore from his lips like a curse before he toppled forward, his head striking the damask cloth with a sound that echoed like a gunshot. Chaos erupted. Lady Harrington screamed, a high, keening sound that shattered the air. Blackwell leapt to his feet, overturning his chair. Evelyn pressed both hands to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. Dr. Thorne was already moving, his medical bag in hand, but even as he reached the fallen man, Poirot knew it was too late. Lord Harrington was dead. Outside, the storm howled louder, as if the very heavens mourned or celebrated. The manor was sealed, its inhabitants trapped with a killer in their midst. Poirot stood slowly, his gaze sweeping the table. The shattered glass, the port decanter, the faces frozen in shock and guilt and fear. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said quietly, his voice cutting through the pandemonium like a blade. "Do not touch anything. The game, as they say, is afoot." And in the flickering candlelight, the shadows seemed to deepen, as if the manor itself held its breath for what was to come. Chapter 2. Whispers in the Halls. The dining room had become a tableau of frozen terror. Lord Harrington lay face down in a spreading stain of port, his fingers still curled as if clawing for breath that would never come. The candles guttered in a sudden draft, sending shadows leaping across the oak-paneled walls like malevolent spirits. Outside, the blizzard hurled itself against the windows with renewed fury, rattling the leaded panes as though demanding entry. Hercule Poirot stood motionless, his small, neat figure the only island of calm in the chaos. His eyes, those keen green eyes that missed nothing, moved methodically across the scene. The overturned chair, the shattered crystal, the port decanter glinting innocently on the sideboard. The little gray cells were already at work, cataloging, analyzing, rejecting the obvious in favor of the possible. Silence. His voice, though soft, cut through Lady Harrington's rising hysteria like a scalpel. She subsided into a chair, her emerald silk gown pooling around her like spilled blood. Blackwell hovered over the body, his face the color of tallow. Evelyn pressed herself against the wall, her pearls clutched so tightly they left red marks on her palm. Dr. Thorne knelt beside the corpse, his fingers probing for a pulse that was not there. "Dead," Thorne announced, his voice flat. "Cyanide, I'd wager. The almond odor, classic." He rose, wiping his hands on a napkin with clinical detachment. "Death within minutes." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Prussic acid, yes, most efficient. But how administered?" He approached the sideboard, his movements precise despite the encumbering dinner jacket. The port decanter was 3/4 full. its ruby contents undisturbed save for the glass that had shattered beneath Harrington's fall. Poirot lifted it carefully, swirling the liquid against the candlelight. No sediment, no discoloration. Yet the victim's glass had been poisoned, selectively. "Graves," he said without turning. The butler materialized from the shadows where he had stood statue still since the tragedy. "You poured the port?" "Yes, sir." Graves' voice was steady, but Poirot noted the slight tremor in his left hand, the same hand that had favored the leg earlier. "From this decanter. His lordship's glass was the last I filled." "Interesting." Poirot set the decanter down. "And who handled the glasses before you?" Graves hesitated, a fraction of a second, but enough. "No one, sir. They were clean from the pantry. I polished them myself this afternoon." Lady Harrington found her voice shrill with accusation. "You polished them? Then you had opportunity. You've served this family for 20 years, Graves, were you? Tired of taking orders from a man who treated you like furniture?" Graves' pallor deepened, but his dignity held. "My lady, I have never—" "Enough!" Poirot raised a hand. "Accusations without evidence are the refuge of the desperate. We will examine opportunity, means, and motive in due course. For now," he turned to Thorne. "Doctor, you will assist me in moving the body to the study. We must preserve the scene." Thorne nodded, and together they lifted Harrington's considerable weight. The dead man's head lolled grotesquely, his tongue protruding, eyes staring sightlessly at the ceiling. Evelyn gave a choked sob and fled the room. Blackwell poured himself a brandy with shaking hands, downing it in a single gulp. In the study, a smaller room lined with leather-bound volumes and dominated by a massive partner's desk, Poirot directed Thorne to lay the body on a Persian rug. The fire here had burned low. Graves followed with fresh logs, his movements mechanical. "Observe," Poirot murmured, kneeling beside the corpse. He lifted Harrington's right hand, examining the fingers. No defensive wounds, no struggle. The poison was ingested willingly, therefore in something he trusted. He sniffed delicately at the dead man's lips. "Port. Undeniably." Thorne's brow furrowed. "But the decanter contains no trace of cyanide." "Yes. Therefore the poison was in the glass alone. A clever substitution." Poirot's gaze swept the room, lingering on the safe set into the wall behind the desk. Its door stood ajar, a detail that had not escaped him earlier. "Graves, was this safe open when you entered?" The butler's eyes flicked to the safe, then away. "No, sir. His lordship kept it locked. The combination was known only to himself and perhaps Mr. Blackwell." Blackwell, who had followed them, bristled. "Here now, I've no idea what was in there. Business papers mostly. Harrington was paranoid about competitors." Poirot's smile was thin. "Paranoia is often justified, monsieur. We shall see." He straightened, brushing imaginary dust from his trousers. "Now we must establish alibis. Doctor, you were seated opposite his lordship. Did you observe anything unusual?" Thorne shook his head. "Only that Harrington drank deeply. He was in high spirits, boasting about some new will he'd drawn up. Said it would surprise a few people." His tone carried a bitterness Poirot filed away. "Will?" Lady Harrington had appeared in the doorway, her composure partially restored, though her eyes were red-rimmed. "He changed it again. The man was obsessed with control, even from beyond the grave." Poirot turned to her. "Madame, you were at the foot of the table. Did you see who might have approached the sideboard?" She hesitated. I stepped into the kitchen just before the port was served, to check on the soufflé. The cook was flustered. The storm has delayed supplies." Her gaze darted to Graves. "He was alone with the decanter." Graves met her accusation steadily. I poured in full view of the room, my lady. Anyone might have tampered with his lordship's glass while I served the others. A new voice cut in, Evelyn hovering behind her aunt. I saw Uncle's glass before Graves filled it. It was already on the table, separate from the others. Someone could have... She trailed off, biting her lip. Poirot pounced. Separate? How so, mademoiselle? It had a chip, Evelyn said. On the rim. Uncle was particular. He always used the same glass, said the others were common. I noticed it when we sat down. A chipped glass. A specific target. The little gray cells hummed. Poirot returned to the dining room, the others trailing like wary ducklings. The shards of Harrington's glass lay where they had fallen, glittering among port stains. Carefully, Poirot gathered the larger pieces, fitting them together on the tablecloth. Yes, there. A tiny notch on the rim, barely visible. Someone knew his lordship's habit, Poirot said softly. Someone intimate with this household. Blackwell snorted. That could be any of us. We've all dined here a dozen times. Precisely. Poirot's eyes gleamed. But who among you knew the glass was chipped? Who had access to the dining room before dinner? Silence fell thick as the snow outside. The fire popped, sending up a shower of sparks. Somewhere in the manor a clock chimed 10, its notes mournful, inevitable. Poirot clapped his hands once, sharply. Come, we will search the house. The poison did not materialize from thin air. And somewhere there is a container, a vial, a bottle, that will bear fingerprints or residue or both. They dispersed reluctantly. Thorn to the kitchen. Cyanide was sometimes used in photographic developing, he claimed. Blackwell to the gun room, though what he expected to find there, Poirot did not ask. Lady Harrington to her boudoir, ostensibly to compose herself but more likely to destroy evidence. Evelyn lingered, wringing her hands. Monsieur Poirot, she whispered. Uncle said... He said the new will disinherited me, that I'd squandered my allowance on frivolous nonsense. If he's dead... Poirot regarded her steadily. Then you inherit nothing, mademoiselle, unless the will was not signed, or unless someone ensured it would never be enforced. Her eyes widened, but before she could respond, a scream echoed from upstairs, high, terrified, unmistakably human. The group froze, then surged toward the grand staircase as one. At the landing, they found the maid, a plump girl named Elsie, cowering outside the late lord's bedroom. The safe, she gasped. It's open and there's blood on the floor. Poirot pushed past her. The bedroom was in disarray. Drawers yanked open, papers strewn like confetti. The wall safe gaped wide, its contents rifled. And on the carpet a single drop of blood gleamed, fresh, accusing. But whose? The storm howled louder, as if laughing at their predicament. Snow Manor had become a prison, its secrets buried deeper than the drifts outside. And somewhere in its shadowed halls a killer walked free, watching, waiting, planning the next move. Chapter 3, The Body in the Dining Room. The drop of blood on the bedroom carpet was no larger than a sixpence, yet it held the room in thrall. Poirot knelt, his magnifying lens glinting in the gaslight, while the others crowded the doorway like uneasy parishioners at a funeral. The metallic scent mingled with the lingering port and beeswax, creating a cloying perfume of death and deceit. Fresh, Poirot murmured, dabbing the spot with a clean handkerchief. The linen came away crimson, not more than an hour old. Curious. Lord Harrington died downstairs, yet here is blood in his private chamber. He rose, eyes sweeping the chaos, the safe yawning like a violated mouth, papers cascading across the Axminster rug, a silver letter opener lying askew beside an overturned chair. Lady Harrington pressed a lace handkerchief to her lips. Burglary? But the storm makes burglary impossible, Poirot finished. No, madam. This is theater. Someone wishes us to believe an intruder rifled the safe after the murder, yet observe—" He pointed to the window. The casement was fastened tight, frost feathering the panes from within. No snow on the sill, no footprints beneath. The burglar was already inside the manor. Dr. Thorne pushed forward, medical bag in hand. The blood could be the killer's, a cut finger while prying the safe. Possible, Poirot conceded, but unlikely. The drop is too neat, too deliberate, a stage prop placed to mislead. He turned to Graves, who stood rigid as a guardsman. You discovered the body at dinner. When did you last enter this room? This morning, sir, to lay the fire. His lordship was at breakfast. Graves' voice was steady, but his eyes flicked to the safe. The combination was known only to himself, and to me, for emergencies. Blackwell snorted. Emergencies? You mean when he locked himself out after a skinful of brandy? Convenient, Graves, very convenient. The butler's jaw tightened. I resent the implications, sir. Poirot raised a placatory hand. Resentments later, facts now. He crossed to the safe, peering inside, empty save for a single leather folder. He lifted it carefully, revealing a sheaf of documents. Share certificates, a deed to a rubber plantation in Malaya, and most intriguingly, a draft will dated 3 days prior. The ink was still crisp. Behold, Poirot said softly, holding the will aloft. The motive, perhaps. He scanned the pages, his eyebrows ascending like drawn curtains. Lady Harrington inherits the estate in trust. Mr. Blackwell receives the Malayan holdings, contingent on settling certain debts. Miss Evelyn is granted a modest annuity, provided she marries within the year. Dr. Thorne is named executor with a generous fee. And Graves, he paused dramatically, Graves is bequeathed £5,000 and a cottage on the estate. A collective intake of breath. Evelyn's face blanched. 5,000 to the butler, while I'm to be sold off like a prize heifer? Lady Harrington's eyes narrowed. And I'm to live on a pittance while Blackwell strips the plantation bare? Blackwell's fists clenched. Debts? What debts? Harrington never mentioned. Because they do not exist, Poirot interrupted. This will is a forgery. Observe the signature. Harrington's hand, yes, but the pressure is uneven, the loop's inconsistent. A skilled imitation, but not the original. He tapped the page. The true will is elsewhere, and someone wished us to find this decoy. Dr. Thorne adjusted his spectacles. Then the blood is from the forger, Poirot finished. A paper cut, perhaps, while planting the false document, but whose blood? He folded the will carefully, slipping it into his pocket. We must examine hands, all of them. They descended to the drawing room where the fire had been stoked high. Graves fetched a silver basin of warm water and towels. One by one, they submitted to inspection. Lady Harrington's manicured fingers were flawless. Blackwell's were calloused from years of manual labor before his rise, but unmarked. Evelyn's trembled as Poirot turned them palm up. A faint scratch marred her left index finger, but it was old, healed white. Dr. Thorne's hands were surgeon steady, the nails clipped short, no cuts. Graves extended his own with reluctance. The left thumb bore a fresh nick crusted with dried blood. Explain, Poirot said quietly. Graves met his gaze. I cut myself this afternoon, sir, polishing the silver, the port glasses. His lordship's had a chip, as Miss Evelyn noted. I nicked my thumb on the rim while cleaning it. Convenient, Blackwell growled. Or truthful, Poirot countered. We shall test the blood on the carpet against Graves. A simple matter of type, though the storm delays proper analysis. He turned to the maid, Elsie, who hovered tearfully. You screamed. What did you see? Elsie wrung her apron. I came to turn down his lordship's bed, sir. The safe was open, papers everywhere, and that blood. I thought he'd been murdered up here too. Poirot patted her shoulder. Compose yourself, child. The murder occurred downstairs in full view, but the staging here is meticulous. He addressed the group. We return to the dining room. The body remains our primary witness. The dining room felt colder now, the candles burned low. Harrington's corpse lay where they had left it, covered with a damask cloth at Poirot's insistence. He drew it back, revealing the contorted face, the blue-tinged lips. Thorne assisted as Poirot conducted a thorough examination. Pockets turned out, a gold watch, stopped at 8:47, a monogrammed handkerchief, a key on a ribbon. The mouth pried open to reveal residue of port and the faint almond scent of cyanide. The dose was massive, Thorne murmured. A grain would suffice. This was closer to 30. Whoever administered it intended certainty. Poirot straightened. Yet the port decanter is clean. Therefore the poison was in the glass alone, and only Harrington's glass. The chipped rim was the target. He lifted the reconstructed shards. Observe the interior, a faint residue, crystalline. The poison was coated inside, dissolving as the port was poured. Blackwell paled. But Graves poured from the decanter. After the glasses were placed, Poirot finished. Someone prepared the glass earlier, knowing Harrington's habit. Who had access to the dining room before dinner? Lady Harrington spoke. The staff, of course, and I checked the flowers. Evelyn arranged the name cards. I did not, Evelyn protested. Uncle insisted on seating himself, said he had announcements to make. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Announcements. The will, perhaps, or something more personal. He turned to Graves. You laid the table? Yes, sir. At 6 o'clock. The glasses were already in place from luncheon. I merely polished them. A lie or truth? Poirot filed it away. He moved to the sideboard, examining the remaining port glasses. 6, untouched. He lifted each to the light. The 5th, Blackwell's, bore a hairline crack at the base. Another chip? Thorne asked. No, a flaw. But observe. Poirot held it beside Harrington's reconstructed glass. The rims are identical in height. Someone switched glasses during the meal, ensuring the poisoned one reached his lordship. Blackwell's voice rose. I never touched his glass. Yet you sat beside him, Poirot said mildly. And you argued over the Malayan holdings at dinner. Opportunity abounded. Lady Harrington laughed bitterly. Opportunity, we all had it. I passed the salt. Evelyn poured water. Even Thorne reached for the claret. Poirot clapped his hands. Precisely. Opportunity is universal. We must seek motive refined by intimacy. He gestured to the body. Cover him again. Tomorrow we search every room, every cupboard. The poison's container is here, likely a small vial, glass, or porcelain. And the true will. As Graves drew the cloth over Harrington's face, a gust rattled the windows. Snow sifted through a crack in the frame, dusting the table like funeral ash. Somewhere in the manor, a door creaked open, then shut. Poirot's gaze sharpened. We are not alone in our vigilance. The killer watches, perhaps even now. He addressed them all. Retire to your rooms, but lock your doors. Tomorrow the Inquisition begins in earnest. They dispersed reluctantly, footsteps echoing on the grand staircase. Poirot lingered alone with the corpse and the dying candles. He spoke softly, as if to the dead man. You were a tyrant, mon ami, but even tyrants deserve justice. Your secrets die with you unless the living betray them. Outside, the storm screamed on, burying Snow Manor deeper in its icy tomb. And in the flickering shadows, the chipped glass gleamed like an accusing eye. Chapter 4. Interrogations by Firelight. The drawing-room fire had been built up until it roared like a caged lion, yet the chill of suspicion clung to every corner. Hercule Poirot stood with his back to the flames, small and immaculate, the perfect silhouette of a conductor about to raise his baton. The guests sat in a ragged semicircle, Lady Harrington on the chaise, spine rigid, Blackwell in a wing chair, brandy balloon cradled like a talisman. Evelyn on a footstool, knees drawn up, Dr. Thorne by the window, half in shadow, Graves at the door, hands clasped behind his back. The storm outside had eased to a low moan, but the manor itself seemed to breathe menace. Poirot began without preamble. We proceed in the classic manner: motive, means, opportunity. Each of you possesses at least two. Let us illuminate the third. He turned first to Lady Harrington. Madam, you spoke of your husband's infidelities. A wife scorned is a cliché, but clichés endure for good reason. Tell me of the woman in London. Clarissa Harrington's chin lifted. Her name is irrelevant. A dancer, cheap, ambitious. He kept her in a flat off Regent Street. I found the bills. Her voice trembled, then steadied. I confronted him last month. He laughed, said a man of his station required variety. And you? Poirot pressed. Did you laugh also, or did you plan? I planned nothing. She opened her reticule, drew out a folded letter, and flung it onto the tea table. Read it yourself. I wrote to threaten divorce, then tore it up. That is the extent of my vengeance. Poirot unfolded the fragments with delicate fingers. The handwriting was hers, elegant, furious. You will regret this, Edward, I swear it. The paper was torn cleanly, as though reconsidered in haste. He tucked the pieces into his waistcoat pocket. Regret is not murder, madame. Yet it is a beginning. He pivoted to Blackwell. Monsieur, the Malayan plantation. Lord Harrington discovered your creative accounting, n'est-ce pas? Blackwell's jowls quivered. Creative? I call it survival. Rubber prices collapsed. I borrowed from the company to cover margins. Temporary. Harrington found the ledgers last week. Threatened exposure, ruin. He drained his brandy. I begged for time. He refused. Said he'd have me in the dock by Christmas. Thus you needed him silenced before the true will was signed. Poirot produced the forged document from his pocket, letting it dangle, like a noose. This version leaves you the plantation, debts erased, convenient if one ignores the forgery. Blackwell lunged forward. I never touched that safe. Yet your fingerprints are on the folder, Poirot said mildly. I dusted it myself. Ink and desperation leave traces. Blackwell sank back, sweat beading despite the fire. Poirot's gaze shifted to Evelyn. Mademoiselle, your allowance was cut last Michaelmas. You wrote pleading letters, unanswered. Then 3 days ago, a telegram. Come to Snow Manor. Final chance. You arrived expecting reconciliation. Instead, disinheritance. Evelyn's eyes brimmed. He said I was a parasite, that I'd marry some fortune hunter and squander everything. The new will gave me nothing unless I wed by my next birthday, approved by him. He was dead before I could argue. She buried her face in her hands. Poirot softened. Grief is natural, but grief can mask calculation. You arranged the name cards at dinner, yes? I told you no, Uncle placed them himself. Yet your fingerprints are on his lordship's card. Curious. He let the silence stretch, then turned to Dr. Thorne. Doctor, you and Harrington were at Oxford together. A duel, I am told, over a woman. You were scarred. He was expelled. Later, your medical license was suspended after a patient died under suspicious circumstances. Harrington testified against you. Thorne's face was stone. Ancient history. He ruined me, yes. I rebuilt my life in obscurity. Then last year he summoned me here, offered absolution in exchange for services. Services? Thorne hesitated. He suffered from angina, wanted a private physician on retainer. I refused. He threatened to dredge up the old scandal. Thus you had motive, Poirot said, and means. Cyanide is a doctor's poison. Quick, clean, traceable to your former dispensary. Thorne opened his medical bag, revealing neat rows of vials. Search it, no cyanide. I destroyed my stock years ago. Poirot did not look inside. Destruction leaves records we shall verify. Finally, he faced Graves. Monsieur le Butler, 20 years of service. Yet last spring £500 vanished from the household accounts. Harrington accused you privately, threatened dismissal without references. You begged to stay. He agreed, on condition of absolute loyalty. Then this week he changed his mind. Graves' mask slipped. He found the second theft. Said he'd turn me over to the police after the weekend. 20 years and I'd end in the workhouse. Thus the forged will, Poirot said. £5,000, enough to vanish. You knew the safe combination, the chipped glass, the port ritual. You polished the glasses, cut your thumb deliberately to explain blood, planted the forgery upstairs. Graves' voice was a whisper. I needed time, just time. Poirot clapped once. Time is what we all need. And now, demonstration. He crossed to the sideboard where the port decanter still stood. From his pocket he drew a small packet of bicarbonate of soda, harmless, theatrical. He poured a measure into Harrington's reconstructed glass, then added port from the decanter. The liquid fizzed faintly. Observe, he said. The poison was not in the port, nor dissolved in advance. It was a crystalline film inside the glass, applied hours earlier. When the port was poured, it dissolved instantly. The chipped rim ensured his lordship used that glass. The forger knew his habits intimately. He set the glass down. But one detail troubles Poirot. The blood upstairs was not Graves'. The cut on his thumb is superficial, this morning's. The carpet drop is darker, older. Someone else bled in that room. A log cracked in the fire. Evelyn gasped. Uncle's nose bled sometimes. Pressure, the doctor said. Could it be his? Thorne shook his head. Not after death. Post-mortem blood doesn't flow. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Precisely. Therefore the killer returned to the bedroom after the murder, to plant the forgery, to stage the burglary. And in haste cut themselves on the letter opener we found. The blood is fresh, but not from the murder itself. He moved to the mantel where a row of family photographs stood in silver frames. One showed Harrington in shooting tweeds, arm around a younger Graves, both smiling a lifetime ago. Poirot lifted it, turned it over, on the back in faded ink, to G with affection, E.H., 1919. Affection, Poirot mused. Once, now betrayal on both sides. Graves' shoulders sagged. I didn't kill him. I forged the will. Yes, desperation, but the poison, I swear. A sudden thud echoed from the hall. The group startled. Graves moved first, flinging open the door. On the threshold lay a silver salver, upturned, a single object upon it. A small glass vial, empty, its cork beside it. A faint almond scent wafted upward. Poirot knelt, careful not to touch. The murder weapon, delivered anonymously. The killer taunts us. He looked up, eyes sweeping the room. Someone here fetched this from its hiding place while we spoke. Someone who knew exactly where it was concealed. The fire popped again. Shadows danced. Outside, the wind had stilled entirely, leaving only the weight of unspoken accusations. Poirot rose. Lock your doors tonight. Tomorrow we search every grate, every mattress, every soul. The vial has no fingerprints, wiped clean. But the hiding place will speak. He turned to Graves. You will remain under watch. The forgery is a crime, but not murder yet. The rest of you, sleep lightly. As they filed out, Poirot lingered, staring into the flames. In their depths, he saw the reflection of the chipped glass, shattered yet still lethal. Somewhere in Snow Manor, the true killer smiled into the dark, certain the storm had buried their tracks. But Hercule, Poirot's little gray cells never slept, and the night was far from over. Chapter 5. Footprints in the Snow. The house slept uneasily, as though Snow Manor itself were a great beast turning in fevered dreams. Clocks ticked in empty corridors, the fire in the drawing room settled into sullen embers. Hercule Poirot did not sleep. At 3 a.m, he stood at the tall library window, gloved hands clasped behind his back, watching the snow fall in slow, deliberate curtains. The storm had returned with a vengeance, erasing every mark the world had made. Poirot's breath fogged the pain. "Ah, la neige," he murmured. "She is beautiful, yes, but she is also the perfect accomplice. She covers footprints, muffles screams, and turns a manor into an island." He turned from the window, his patent leather shoes whispering across the turkey rug. But even the snow cannot lie to Hercule Poirot. In his pocket lay the empty cyanide vial, delivered on the silver salver like a macabre gift. No fingerprints, no label, only the faint almond ghost of its contents. Somewhere in this house was the place it had been hidden, and that place would bear the imprint of its keeper. He moved to the hearth, where the fire's last glow painted the room in blood and shadow. On the mantel sat a brass telescope, Harrington's pride, used for scanning the moors on clearer days. Poirot lifted it, aimed it not at the sky but at the floor. The lens caught a glint, a single strand of wool dark against the pale rug. He plucked it free, navy blue, coarse, the sort worn by a manservant. "Graves," he whispered, "or someone wishing us to think so." A soft creak sounded behind him. Poirot spun, telescope raised like a club. Dr. Thorne stood in the doorway, fully dressed, a candle in one hand and his medical bag in the other. "Couldn't sleep," Thorne said. His voice was hoarse. "Thought I'd check the body again. Rigor is setting in." Poirot lowered the telescope. "You are thorough, Doctor. Or perhaps you seek something you left behind." Thorne's candle guttered. "I've nothing to hide. Everyone hides something." Poirot stepped aside. "Come, we will examine the conservatory. The maid mentioned broken glass there earlier, before the murder. A coincidence, perhaps." They moved through the darkened hall, their footsteps echoing. The conservatory lay at the rear, a glass-walled appendage jutting into the storm. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of earth and dying orchids. Moonlight filtered through frost-laced panes, turning the palms into skeletal sentinels. Poirot knelt beside a shattered pane near the door. Snow had drifted in, forming a small mound. "Here," he said. A rock was thrown from outside or inside to simulate an intruder. He brushed snow aside, revealing footprints, deep, deliberate, leading to a potting bench. The prints were large, size 11 perhaps, and the tread distinct. A hobnailed boot. Thorne crouched. Gardener's boots. Graves wears them. Or someone borrowed them. Poirot followed the trail. On the bench lay a clay pot, overturned. Beneath it, a second vial, identical to the first but stoppered and half full of clear liquid. He lifted it carefully. Our missing twin, hidden in haste, then retrieved, only to be replaced by the empty one on the salver. Thorne's candle trembled. The killer is playing cat and mouse, or confessing inability to destroy evidence completely. Poirot pocketed the vial. But observe, the footprints loop back toward the door, then vanish. Someone brushed them away with a broom. Yet here, he pointed to a corner. A single print remains pressed into the soil of a fern. The weight is wrong, too light for Graves. A woman, perhaps, or a slight man. They returned to the hall. Dawn was still hours away, but the house stirred. Lady Harrington appeared on the landing, wrapped in a sable coat, her face pale as parchment. "I heard voices," she said. "Is it safe?" Poirot bowed. "Safe as a tomb, madam. But come, we have discoveries." He led them to the kitchen where the great range glowed. Elsie the maid was already up, kneading dough with mechanical rhythm. Graves entered moments later, summoned by the commotion. His left hand was bandaged now, fresh linen professionally applied. "Your thumb?" Poirot asked. "Infected," Graves said curtly. "Dr. Thorne dressed it." Thorne nodded confirmation. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Convenient timing. Blackwell lumbered in, unshaven, eyes red. "What's all this, another body?" "Only footprints," Poirot said. "And a second vial. Someone attempted to create an outside intruder, but the snow betrays them. No tracks lead from the moor to the conservatory. The burglar was already within." Evelyn appeared last, in a dressing gown, hair loose. "I couldn't sleep, the storm. It sounds like screaming." Poirot assembled them around the kitchen table. "We reconstruct the sequence. Yesterday afternoon the glasses are polished, the chipped one prepared with cyanide crystals. Evening, the safe is opened, the forged will planted, a drop of blood added for drama. Dinner, the port is poured, the poison dissolves. After murder, the killer returns upstairs, stages the burglary, hides the vial in the conservatory. Later retrieves it, wipes it clean, delivers it anonymously." He placed the full vial on the table. "But why keep this? Insurance, blackmail, or fear of discovery?" Lady Harrington stared at it. "That could kill us all." "Precisely why it must be secured." Poirot slipped it into a handkerchief. "Now, hands. Everyone show your souls." They obeyed reluctantly. Graves' boots were caked with conservatory soil, matching the hidden print. But Evelyn's slippers bore a faint green stain. Chlorophyll from the fern. Blackwell's shoes were clean. Thorne's had a trace of port on the toe. "Multiple players," Poirot murmured, "or one borrowing shoes." Graves spoke. "I was in the conservatory yesterday pruning orchids for the table. The broken pane was already there. I meant to repair it today." "Yet you did not mention it," Poirot said. "And the vial was hidden beneath a pot you would have seen." "I saw nothing." Poirot turned to Evelyn. "Mademoiselle, the green stain?" "I walked in my sleep once. Perhaps I wandered there." Her voice quavered. Blackwell snorted. "Sleepwalking? Convenient nonsense." Poirot raised a hand. "Enough. We search the conservatory again, at first light. The snow stops soon, the police will come. Until then, no one leaves this kitchen." He stationed Graves at the door, Thorne by the range. The others sat in tense silence. Outside, the wind dropped to a whisper. Dawn crept in, gray and reluctant. At 6, Poirot led them back to the conservatory. The footprints were pristine now, preserved by the cold. He measured them against Graves' boot, identical tread, but the depth shallower by half an inch. "Someone lighter," Poirot said, "wearing Graves' boots over their own shoes. Clever, but the soil betrays weight." He moved to the fern. Beneath it, pressed into the earth, was a pearl earring, small, perfect, matching Evelyn's set. Evelyn gasped. "That's mine. I lost it yesterday." "In the conservatory?" Poirot asked gently. "I don't remember." Lady Harrington's eyes widened. "You were there. I saw you slip out after luncheon, said you needed air." Evelyn's face crumpled. "I was looking for Uncle's will. He hinted it was hidden among the plants. I found nothing." Poirot lifted the earring. "Yet you left this, and the vial, and the lighter footprint. You staged the intruder, mademoiselle, to deflect from the forged will you planted. I didn't kill him, she cried. I only wanted my inheritance. Poirot's voice was soft. Wanting and doing are separated by a single step. You crossed it, or someone pushed you. A new sound cut the air, the crunch of tires on snow. Headlights pierced the conservatory glass. A police car, its siren muted by the drifts, pulled up to the porte cochere. Poirot smiled grimly. The outside world returns, but the footprints remain. And footprints, mes amis, do not lie. He turned to the group. The net tightens. One of you walked in stolen boots. One of you hid poison among the orchids. And one of you, his gaze settled on the empty space where the vial had been, has just realized the game is nearly over. The police knocked. Snow Manor's doors opened to the law, but inside, the real judgment was only beginning. Chapter 6. Secrets of the Manor. The police arrived like a cold wind blowing open a tomb. Inspector Japp, square, dogged, and utterly English, strode in with 2 constables, snow cascading from their capes. The storm had broken at dawn. The moor road was passable barely. Japp's eyes widened at the sight of Poirot, then narrowed at the assembled suspects huddled in the hall. Poirot! Thought you were on holiday. Instead, I find a corpse in a house full of long faces. Typical. Poirot gave a small bow. A holiday, mon cher Japp, is merely an investigation one has not yet recognized. Lord Harrington was poisoned at dinner. Cyanide in his port glass. Selectively. We have a forged will, staged footprints, 2 vials, and a great many secrets. Japp grunted, signaling his men to secure the dining room. Bodies still there? Preserved by the cold, Dr. Thorne said, stepping forward. Rigor complete. I can assist with the post-mortem. Japp eyed him. You're the doctor? Right. You'll come with us. He turned to Poirot. Walk me through it. They moved to the dining room, where Harrington lay beneath the damask shroud. Japp lifted it, whistled at the contorted face. Poirot recounted the sequence. The chipped glass, the clean decanter, the conservatory vial, the lighter footprints in stolen boots. Japp listened, chewing his mustache. Inside job, then. No outsider could navigate this weather. Précisément, and the manor itself conspires. Poirot led Japp to the library. Observe the paneling. He pressed a carved rose. A section swung inward, revealing a narrow passage. Dust motes danced in their torchlight. Servants' corridors, forgotten by all but the staff. One enters behind the conservatory, emerges beside the study safe. Japp swore softly. A rat's maze. Built in 1782 for smuggling brandy, Graves offered from the doorway. His lordship sealed most entrances years ago. I alone kept the keys. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Alone? Then explain this. He produced a second key, brass worn, found in Evelyn's dressing gown pocket during the dawn search. Mademoiselle? Evelyn flushed. Uncle gave it to me when I was a child for hide and seek. I forgot it was there. Forgot, Poirot repeated, yet you used it yesterday to access the study via the passage, plant the forged will, and stage the burglary. The blood drop was yours, pricked finger on the letter opener. I told you I only wanted to see the will. Japp scribbled in his notebook. We'll need fingerprints, blood typing. Storm delayed the yard van, but it's en route. They proceeded to the study. The safe still gaped. Papers lay scattered. Poirot knelt, brushing aside a ledger. Beneath, a hidden drawer sprung by a concealed catch. Inside lay the true will, sealed dated yesterday, witnessed by Graves and the cook. Poirot broke the wax. Listen carefully, he said, reading aloud. To my wife, Clarissa, the London house and £20,000. To my niece, Evelyn, the residue of the estate, on condition she manages it herself, no trustees. To Reginald Blackwell, nothing. His embezzlement forfeits all claims. To Dr. Jonathan Thorne, £10,000 in gratitude for past services. To my butler Graves, £1,000 and the cottage in recognition of loyalty. A stunned silence. Blackwell's face purpled. Nothing. After I built that plantation with my own hands. Lady Harrington laughed, a brittle, triumphant sound. 20,000. I can live on that. And Evelyn inherits everything else, Evelyn whispered, eyes wide. He trusted me after all. Graves bowed his head. 1,000, generous. Poirot held up a hand. But this will was never signed in the presence of the witnesses. Graves, where were you at 7 o'clock yesterday? In the pantry, sir. Polishing silver, the cook can vouch. She cannot, Poirot said gently. The cook was in the village until 6, delayed by snow. You were alone. You forged the witnesses' signatures on the decoy will, then hid the true one here, planning to destroy it after the murder. But the murder was not yours. He turned to Thorne. Docteur, your bag. Thorne opened it reluctantly. Nestled among instruments, a small leather case. Poirot lifted it, revealing a hypodermic syringe and a third vial. Cyanide crystals dissolved in saline. Thorne paled. For euthanasia, a patient in pain. Lord Harrington had angina, Poirot said. You offered relief. He refused. Then yesterday he threatened to expose your past, again. You prepared the syringe but hesitated. Instead, you coated the glass. I did not. Poirot produced the navy wool strand from the library. From your scarf, Doctor. Caught when you entered the passage to hide the syringe case, after planting the vial in the conservatory. Japp stepped forward. Dr. Jonathan Thorne, I'm arresting you for the murder of Lord Edward Harrington. Wait, Lady Harrington cried. There's more. She drew a photograph from her reticule. Harrington in a compromising pose with a young man, Blackwell's secretary, long dismissed. He was blackmailing Reginald. I found this in the safe yesterday morning. I confronted Edward. He laughed, said it was insurance. Blackwell lunged at the photograph, but Japp restrained him. Embezzlement and blackmail. You're Nick too, sir. Poirot raised a hand. One moment. The footprints, lighter than Graves in his boots. Mademoiselle Evelyn borrowed them to create the intruder myth, yes. But the syringe case bears a thumbprint, not Thorne's. Smaller. A woman's. All eyes turned to Lady Harrington. She smiled thinly. I handled it when I found it in the study. Curiosity. Poirot shook his head. No, madam. You handled it when you planted it in Thorne's bag, after the murder. You discovered the true will, realized your 20,000 was safe, but saw a chance to eliminate rivals. You coated the glass with cyanide from Thorne's old dispensary, accessed via the passage key you stole from Evelyn's room. Clarissa's composure cracked. You cannot prove. I can. Poirot produced a glass slide from his pocket. Residue from the chipped rim. And this, a second slide, from the lipstick on your cigarette case. Identical almond trace. You kissed the rim after coating it, ensuring the poison adhered. Japp stared. Lipstick? A woman's touch, Poirot said. She knew Harrington's habit of swirling the port, wetting the rim. The kiss was both poison and signature. Clarissa lunged for the door, but Graves blocked her. My lady, he said sadly. It's over, she sagged. He ruined us all. I only evened the score. Poirot turned to Japp. Lady Clarissa Harrington, murder. Dr. Thorne, accessory for the cyanide. Mr. Blackwell, embezzlement. Miss Evelyn, forgery of the decoy will. Graves, concealment of evidence. A tapestry of crime woven from greed and grievance. Japp signaled his men. Handcuffs clicked. Evelyn wept silently. Thorne stared at the floor. Blackwell cursed. Graves stood stoic as Clarissa was led away. Poirot watched from the library window as the police van disappeared into the white moor. Snow began to fall again, soft and deliberate, erasing the tire tracks as if the manor itself wished to forget. He spoke to the empty room. In the end, the snow kept its secrets, but not from Hercule Poirot. Order is restored. The little gray cells have triumphed. Behind him, the hidden passage yawned, dark and patient. Snow Manor would stand for centuries, its walls echoing with whispers of betrayal. But for now, justice had walked its halls. And outside, the moor slept once more beneath its blanket of white. Chapter 7. The Web of Deceit. The manor exhaled. With the arrests made and the police van swallowed by the moor, Snow Manor seemed to settle into itself, the way an old house sighs after a storm. Yet Hercule Poirot did not sigh. He stood in the library, the true will spread beneath the green banker's lamp, his little gray cells spinning like a precision watch. Something itched. One thread in the tapestry remained loose. Inspector Japp had taken statements, sealed evidence, and departed with his prisoners rattling in the van. Only Poirot, Graves, and the trembling maid Elsie remained. The fire crackled low. Outside, fresh snow hissed against the panes. "Graves," Poirot said without turning, "you will brew coffee. Strong. Then we talk. Alone." Graves bowed and vanished. Poirot paced, mustache twitching. Lady Harrington's lipstick on the glass rim. Elegant. Damning. Thorne's cyanide. Blackwell's embezzlement. Evelyn's forged decoy. Graves' hidden key. All fitted. Yet the footprints in the conservatory, lighter than Graves', heavier than Evelyn's, nagged like a burr. Graves returned with a silver tray. 2 cups, a pot, sugar, no milk. Poirot disliked milk after midnight. They sat opposite the fire. "You lied, mon ami," Poirot began softly. "Not about the murder, no. About the timing. You were not in the pantry at 7, you were in the passage watching." Graves' cup paused halfway to his lips. "Sir? The cook returned at 6:15, not 6. I spoke to her in the village before the police arrived. She walked with the grocer's boy. You had 45 minutes unaccounted for. You saw Lady Harrington enter the study via the passage. You saw her open the safe, read the true will, coat the glass. You could have stopped her." Graves set the cup down. "I considered it. 20 years of service, and she would hang. But his lordship treated me little better than a dog. I thought, let them destroy each other." Poirot nodded. "And then you forged the decoy will to protect Miss Evelyn, your goddaughter, yes? The locket you wear beneath your waistcoat, her baby picture." Graves' hand flew to his collar, then fell. "Yes. Her mother, my sister, died in childbirth. His lordship promised to provide. He did, but at a price, my silence, my life. When he threatened to disinherit Evelyn, I acted. The decoy gave her a chance." "Admirable," Poirot said. "Misguided, but admirable. Yet you planted the blood drop upstairs, your own, from the silver cut, to incriminate yourself and draw suspicion from her. I thought the police would see through it. They did not. I did." Poirot leaned forward. "But the footprints. You weigh 14 stone. The conservatory prints were 11. Who walked in your boots?" Graves hesitated. "Elsie." The maid passing the door with fresh logs froze. Her apron was dusted with soot, her eyes wide as saucers. "Elsie," Poirot beckoned. "Come, child, the truth now." She entered, trembling. I didn't mean harm, sir. Mr. Graves asked me to sweep the conservatory after Miss Evelyn left the earring. I wore his boots. They were by the door. I wanted to help." Poirot's gaze softened. "You hid the full vial under the fern, then retrieved the empty one to deliver on the salver, anonymously to protect Graves. Elsie nodded miserably. "He's been kind to me. Said her ladyship was the devil." Graves closed his eyes. "I used the girl. My sin, not hers." Poirot stood. "Then the web is complete. Lady Harrington poisoned the glass, believing the true will left her penniless. Thorne supplied the cyanide unknowingly. Blackwell's fraud gave motive. Evelyn forged the decoy to secure her future. You, Graves, concealed and misdirected to shield your niece. Elsie, the innocent pawn, carried messages and evidence." He moved to the hidden passage, pressed the panel. It swung open, revealing a narrow stair descending into darkness. "But one secret remains. The manor's deepest." Graves paled. "The cellar. His lordship kept trophies." They descended, Poirot leading with a candle. The air grew damp, heavy with the scent of mold and iron. At the bottom, a brick vault. Graves produced a key. Inside, shelves of ledgers, photographs, a child's dress stained brown, a locket, Evelyn's but older. Poirot lifted the dress. "Blood?" "Lady Harrington's first child," Graves whispered. "Stillborn. His lordship blamed her. Kept it as punishment. She found it years later, snapped." Poirot's face hardened. "The root of her hatred, not infidelity, loss." He closed the vault. "This stays buried. Some truths destroy the living." They returned upstairs. Dawn bled through the windows, painting the hall rose and gold. Poirot poured the last of the coffee. "The police will charge Lady Harrington with murder, Thorne with supplying poison, Blackwell with fraud, Evelyn with forgery. You, Graves, will face obstruction, leniency for cooperation, Elsie nothing." Graves bowed his head. "And the manor?" "Miss Evelyn inherits. She will sell it. Some houses are better raised." Elsie curtsied. "Thank you, sir." Poirot adjusted his hat. "Merci. You gave me the final thread." He stepped into the crisp morning. The snow had stopped. The moor sparkled like diamond dust. A car waited. Jap had sent it. As he climbed in, Graves called, "Monsieur Poirot, why spare the cellar?" Poirot paused. "Because justice must sometimes be tempered with mercy. The dead are beyond judgment. The living must heal." The car crunched away. Snow Manor dwindled in the mirror, its chimneys smoking farewell. Poirot closed his eyes. The web is untangled, the spider is gone, and Hercule Poirot is, as always, content. The moor swallowed the car, and the manor stood alone once more, silent, secrets locked in frost. Chapter 8. Gathering Storm of Evidence. The morning light that crept into Snow Manor was thin and reluctant, as though the sun itself hesitated to witness what lay within. Hercule Poirot had returned from the moor road with Inspector Japp's second car, delayed by a fallen birch across the lane, and now the house filled again with official footsteps. Constables tramped snow across the parquet. A photographer's magnesium flashes lit the dining room like summer lightning. Yet Poirot stood apart in the conservatory, staring at the single fern whose soil still bore the ghost of a lighter footprint. He spoke to no one, but his mind spoke volumes. The case is closed, they say. Lady Harrington to the gallows, Thorne to prison, Blackwell to the courts, Evelyn to a magistrate, Graves to a caution. And yet, he twirled the stem of a dying orchid between gloved fingers. Yet the little gray cells refused their rest. A constable approached. "Sir, Inspector Japp asks for you in the study. Something about the safe." Poirot followed, his shoes leaving no imprint on the melting slush. The study was chaos. Drawers emptied, books strewn, the hidden drawer yawning like a second mouth. Japp stood over the desk, a ledger open in his ham-sized hands. "Found this wedged behind the drawer," he said. "Harrington's private accounts. Look at the last entry, dated yesterday, 3 p.m. Poirot leaned in. The ink was fresh, the hand shaky but unmistakable. paid G 500. Final, no more. If he speaks of E's parentage, ruin. Below, a scrawled note in Graves' precise copperplate. Accepted. Silence assured. Poirot's mustache bristled. Parentage. Evelyn is not Harrington's niece? Japp whistled. Looks like the old lord paid Graves to keep his mouth shut. Question is, whose child is she? Poirot's eyes narrowed. Graves' sister died in childbirth, he said, but whose child survived? He snapped the ledger shut. We convene everyone now. Within minutes, the drawing room was reassembled, though the cast had shrunk. Only Graves and Elsie remained of the household. The others were in the police van en route to York. Poirot took the hearth, Japp flanking him like a bulldog. Graves, Poirot began. You told me Evelyn was your sister's daughter. A convenient fiction, no? The locket you wear, open it. Graves' hand trembled, but he obeyed. Inside, a miniature of a young woman, auburn-haired, with Clarissa Harrington's eyes. Mon Dieu, Poirot breathed. Lady Harrington's child, believed stillborn. You stole her from the cradle to spare her mother's shame, or to secure your own future. Graves' voice cracked. Her ladyship was 17, unwed. The midwife was bribed. His lordship paid for silence. I raised Evelyn as my niece, but she is Clarissa's daughter, and Harrington's. Elsie gasped. Miss Evelyn, her own aunt? Her mother, Poirot corrected, and the true heir. The will leaves everything to my niece Evelyn. Blood calls to blood. Japp scratched his head. But Lady Harrington poisoned him. She didn't know. She knew, Poirot said. The cellar trophy, the child's dress. She discovered it years ago, believed the baby dead. When Harrington threatened to reveal Evelyn's parentage, to disinherit her as a bastard, Clarissa acted to protect her daughter's future, not her own. Graves sank into a chair. She came to me yesterday morning, frantic, asked if the child lived. I lied, said no. She must have seen the locket later, put the pieces together. Poirot paced. Thus the lipstick on the glass rim, not a signature, but a kiss. A mother's kiss, poisoned by desperation. She believed she was saving Evelyn from ruin. He turned to the constable. Radio York, stop the van. Lady Harrington must be told. Her confession may change. But the radio crackled with static. Storm damage to the aerial. Japp cursed. We'll drive ourselves. Poirot held up a hand. One more piece. He crossed to the mantel, lifted the photograph of Harrington and Graves in 1919. On the back, beneath the faded inscription, fresh ink. If I die, tell C the truth. E is ours. Harrington wrote this yesterday, Poirot said. He intended to confess at dinner, hence the announcements. Clarissa overheard, acted first. Graves wept silently. He was going to acknowledge her, after all these years. The conservatory door banged open. A constable entered, snow on his boots, holding a small tin box. Found this buried under the fern, sir, after you left. Poirot opened it. Inside, a lock of auburn hair, a tiny silver rattle, and a note in Clarissa's hand. Forgive me, my darling. I thought I protected you. Japp stared. She hid this after the murder, insurance maybe. Or a suicide pact, Poirot said quietly. She expected arrest. This was for Evelyn to find later. He closed the box. The storm of evidence gathers. Mother kills father to save child. Child forges will to save herself. Doctor supplies poison to save his past. Businessman steals to save his future. Butler lies to save his family, and the snow, he gestured at the window, covers all until truth melts it away. Graves looked up. What happens to Evelyn now? Poirot's voice softened. She inherits. The will is valid, blood tie proven, but she will carry the weight of her parents' sins. Japp clapped his notebook shut. Right. We'll fetch the van. You coming, Poirot? Poirot shook his head. I remain. One final act. He led Graves and Elsie to the cellar vault. The child's dress lay where they had left it. Poirot lifted it gently, folded it into the tin box with the rattle and hair. This goes to Evelyn, he said, with a letter, from me. She must know the truth, but also the love that twisted into murder. Some storms begin in the heart. They emerged into daylight. The moor sparkled, innocent. Poirot watched the police car vanish, then turned to Graves. You will stay as steward until Evelyn is of age. Teach her honesty, the one thing this house lacked. Graves nodded. And you, sir? Poirot adjusted his Homburg. I return to London. Order is restored. But the little grey cells, they never truly rest. He walked to the waiting car. As it pulled away, Snow Manor stood behind him, smaller now. Secrets exhumed, its shadow shorter in the rising sun. The storm had passed. The evidence had spoken, and somewhere a young woman would learn that inheritance is not only gold, but ghosts. Chapter 9. The Confrontation. The police van had been stopped on the York Road. Its prisoners returned to Snow Manor under heavy escort. The drawing room, once a stage for polite lies, now bristled with uniforms. Lady Clarissa Harrington sat alone on the chaise longue, wrists in cuffs, the sable coat replaced by a constable's blanket. Her face was marble, but her eyes, those storm-gray eyes, were alive with something between defiance and dread. Hercule Poirot entered last, closing the doors with a soft click that sounded like a judge's gavel. Inspector Japp stood at his shoulder. Graves and Elsie hovered by the fire, summoned as witnesses. The tin box from the conservatory rested on the tea table like a small coffin. Poirot did not speak at once. He circled the room, adjusting a crooked picture frame, straightening a cushion, restoring order before truth. Then he stopped before Clarissa. Madame, he began, voice gentle yet inexorable. The game is finished. The snow has melted. The footprints remain. It is time. Clarissa's chin lifted. I have confessed. I poisoned Edward. What more do you want? Everything, Poirot said, the why, the how, the heart of it. You did not kill for money. You killed for love. Twisted, yes, but love. Begin with the child. Her breath hitched. You found the dress. And the rattle, the lock of hair, the note. Poirot opened the tin box, laid each item on the table like evidence in a trial. Your daughter, believed stillborn, stolen by Graves to spare you shame. Raised as Evelyn. You discovered the truth yesterday morning, none. Clarissa's voice was a whisper. I went to the cellar for brandy. Edward kept the good vintages there. The vault was ajar. I saw the dress of the blood. I thought he had kept a dead child as a trophy. I confronted him. He laughed, said, ask Graves about the cradle. Graves stepped forward, eyes down. I told her the truth then, that the baby lived, that Evelyn was hers. Clarissa's hands twisted in the cuffs. He said he would announce it at dinner, acknowledge her publicly, change the will to name her sole heir, but only if I agreed to a divorce. He would ruin me socially, leave me penniless, keep Evelyn under his thumb. I would lose her twice. Poirot nodded. So you acted. You knew the chipped glass, his superstition. You knew Thorne's old dispensary in the passage. You coated the rim with cyanide, kissed it to seal the poison. Your last kiss to the man who betrayed you and to the daughter you thought lost. I thought I was saving her, Clarissa said, tears cutting tracks through powder. If he died before the announcement, the old will stood. She would inherit everything free of him. Japp cleared his throat. And the forged decoy will? Evelyn's work, Poirot said. She overheard the argument, feared disinheritance. She created the forgery to secure her future, unaware it was already hers by blood. Evelyn was brought in then, pale and trembling, wrists also cuffed. She stared at Clarissa, at her mother, and the room seemed to shrink. You're my mother? Evelyn's voice broke. Clarissa stood, blanket falling. Yes, darling, I thought I protected you. Instead, I damned us both. Evelyn collapsed into her arms, sobbing. The constable allowed it, a moment of grace before separation. Poirot turned to Dr. Thorne, who had been fetched from the van. Doctor, you supplied the cyanide knowingly? Thorne's spectacles flashed. I kept a small amount for research, harmless in dilution. Clarissa asked for a sedative yesterday. I gave her a vial thinking it laudanum. She must have switched them. Switched? Japp barked. Poirot produced 2 vials from his pocket, one full, one empty. Identical labels, different contents, a sleight of hand in the passage. You are guilty of negligence, doctor, not murder. Thorne sagged with relief. Blackwell was last, surly in handcuffs. And me? I stole, yes, but I didn't kill. Poirot regarded him. You provided the distraction. Your argument at dinner over the plantation kept eyes from the sideboard. You knew Clarissa's plan? Blackwell hesitated. She hinted. Said Harrington would get what he deserved. I thought she meant scandal, not poison. Lies have weight, Poirot said. Yours added to the storm. He faced the room. The confrontation is complete. Mother kills father to save child. Child forges will to save self. Doctor supplies poison unwittingly. Businessman distracts. Butler conceals blood ties. All threads meet in the chipped glass. Clarissa looked at Evelyn. Forgive me. Evelyn wiped her eyes. I already have, but I'll carry this forever. Poirot addressed Japp. Charges Lady Harrington, murder. Miss Evelyn, forgery, reduced for cooperation. Dr. Thorne, negligent supply, caution. Mr. Blackwell, embezzlement, Graves, obstruction, leniency for revealing the child. Japp nodded. And the manor? Miss Evelyn's, Poirot said. She will sell it. Some houses are built on graves. He opened the tin box once more, removed the rattle, and placed it in Evelyn's hand. Your mother's gift. Keep it. Let it remind you that love can poison and heal. The prisoners were led out. Clarissa paused at the door, looked back at Poirot. You could have let the cellar stay buried. Poirot's smile was sad. Truth is a storm, madame. It destroys, but it clears the air. The doors closed, Snow Manor emptied. Only Graves and Elsie remained, the fire dying to embers. Poirot donned his coat. The confrontation is over. The little gray cells rest, at last. He stepped into the crisp afternoon. The moor stretched white and endless, the manor behind him already fading into legend. A single raven circled overhead, then vanished into the sun. Order was restored, justice served. And somewhere a mother's kiss, poisoned yet eternal, lingered on a shattered glass. Chapter 10. Resolution in the Thaw. The thaw came quickly, as though the moor itself wished to wash Snow Manor clean. By noon the icicles had begun to weep from the eaves. By 2 o'clock the drifts slumped into gray slush, revealing the gravel drive like a scar. Hercule Poirot stood on the front steps in his camel hair coat, valise in hand, watching the last police car disappear toward the village. The air smelled of wet earth and coal smoke, ordinary human alive. Inside, the house was already being stripped. Constables carried out ledgers and photographs. A clerk sealed the cellar vault with red tape. Graves directed them with quiet dignity, his butler's black replaced by a tweed jacket that had once belonged to Harrington. Elsie followed with tea trays for the officers, her apron crisp, her eyes no longer frightened. Poirot entered the drawing room one final time. The fire was out. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, laying bright bars across the turkey rug. Evelyn stood at the mantel, the tin box open before her. The child's rattle gleamed in her palm. "They're taking Mother to York," she said without turning. "The assizes are in March. They say she may hang." Poirot's voice was soft. "The law is the law, mademoiselle, but mercy sometimes wears a different face. Your testimony, your forgiveness will weigh in the balance." Evelyn faced him. The petulant debutante was gone. In her place stood a young woman, eyes older than her years. "I'll speak for her. I'll sell this house, pay for the best barrister. If she must live in prison, at least let it be with hope." Poirot inclined his head. "A wise inheritance." Graves entered, carrying a small leather portmanteau. "The London train leaves in an hour, sir. I've booked you first class." Poirot smiled. "You will not accompany me?" Graves glanced at Evelyn. "Miss Harrington has asked me to stay on as steward until the estate is settled. After that," he shrugged, "a cottage in the Lake District, perhaps. Somewhere the snow is kinder." Elsie appeared in the doorway, a letter in her hand. "From Dr. Thorne, miss, left at the gate." She handed it to Evelyn, who broke the seal. Evelyn read aloud, "I return to Harley Street. The medical council has reinstated me. Your uncle's testimony was the only stain. Tell Poirot the little gray cells saved more than one life. J.T." She folded the note, eyes bright. "He's free." "As are you," Poirot said. "The forgery charge is dropped. Cooperation, youth, and the truth of your birth. Blackwell will face trial for embezzlement, but the plantation returns to the estate. You are wealthy, mademoiselle, and alone." Evelyn looked around the room, its faded grandeur, its ghosts. "I'll tear the worst of it down, the passage, the vault, build something smaller, a school, perhaps, for girls who have no one." Poirot's mustache twitched in approval. "A fitting monument." He moved to the window. The raven was back, perched on the gatepost, watching. Poirot raised a gloved hand in salute. The bird cocked its head, then took flight. Graves cleared his throat. "Sir, before you go, his lordship's study. There's something he asked me to give you, should the worst happen." He led Poirot upstairs. The study was bare now, save for the partner's desk. Graves opened the top drawer, removed a small ebony box. Inside, a gold pocket watch stopped at 8:47, the exact moment of death, and a folded note in Harrington's hand. "To Hercule Poirot, should I fall by foul play, the watch is yours. Time is the detective's only master. Thank you for seeing what I could not. E.H." Poirot turned the watch over. On the back engraved "Order and Method." He slipped it into his waistcoat. "A generous bequest. I shall wind it daily." Downstairs, the hall clock struck 3. The car, an Austin sent from the village, waited at the door. Poirot donned his Homburg, shook Graves' hand, kissed Elsie's cheek. Evelyn accompanied him to the steps. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, "you gave me a mother, even if only for a moment. How can I repay you?" Poirot smiled. "Live well, mademoiselle, that is payment enough." He climbed into the car. As it pulled away, he looked back once. Evelyn stood between Graves and Elsie, the three of them framed by the manor's great door. She raised the rattle in farewell. The sun caught its silver, flashing like a star. The drive wound through the moor, now green and brown beneath the melting snow. Poirot opened the ebony box, wound the watch. It ticked steadily, reclaiming lost minutes. He leaned back, eyes half closed. The case is closed, he thought. Mother, father, child, reunited in tragedy, separated by justice. The snow has melted, the secrets are laid bare. And Hercule Poirot, he patted the watch. Poirot is content. At the station, the London train waited, steam curling like incense. Poirot boarded, found his compartment, arranged his valise with precision. As the whistle blew and the wheels began to turn, he took out his notebook and wrote in his neat, slanted hand, "Snow Manor, 1935, poison in a kiss, truth in a thaw, Time, as always, reveals all. He closed the book, tucked it away, and watched the moor slide past the window. The Raven followed for a mile, then veered north. Poirot raised the watch in silent salute. The train gathered speed. London called, and somewhere behind a new manor would rise from the ruins, smaller, kinder, built on forgiveness rather than fear. The thaw